You're tuned into SEC Sunday Night, part of the Chief Sports Network.
On a Tuesday, SEC Sunday night, what is going on? What are we doing here? Well, Craig, we have college football playoff rankings, and that means it's time to have fun. Forget what day it is. It doesn't matter that it's not Sunday. It could be Tuesday. It could be any day that ends in Y, and we're going to show up because we have a reaction show for you. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, for rankings that matter. This is not the preseason. This is not the AP where somebody who doesn't watch anything just gets a random vote. This is the college football playoff where we put people who may or may not know what the sport of football is in a room, and they hang their hats on a coat hanger by the door.
What was that, by the way?
I'm not really sure what we were going for there.
Who thought that was a good idea? Like, hey, look, we've got a coat rack or a hat rack, and we're going to put our hats.
Was it even a hat rack?
I don't know. I don't know what it was. I mean, is that a Bed Bath & Beyond special? I don't know.
I don't have a clue. However, I will say that upon the revealing these rankings, I immediately have more faith in Mack Rhoades than I ever had in Ward Manuel. Watching Reese Davis talk to Mack Rhoades on ESPN right after these the college football playoff rankings came out gave me this weird confidence. Because he, first of all, knows it appears a little bit more of what he's talking about. And secondly, I would just like to commend Reese Davis. Not that he's ever going to hear any words that come out of my mouth, but it's just absolutely phenomenal in the line of questioning and the way that he delivers it and the things that he pushed on. Two key questions, Craig, that I think that he asked that we need to pay attention to are, number one, what is the role of computers in determining what these rankings are? And number two, how much weight is being put on when the actual number of losses for these teams? He asked him specifically, are we just ranking teams because of the number of losses they have? And he pointed out that BYU is ahead of or behind some one-loss teams.
Yep.
But then you have Notre Dame with 2 losses ahead of some one-loss teams. So you have some questions in there in terms of those kind of outliers. I think the thing that sticks out to me right off the gate, and I'll just kind of give these numbers to you guys here. The Big Ten with 7 teams in the top 25. The SEC has 9. ACC with 5. The Big 12 with 3. And then add Notre Dame, and that would be the sticking point for me, is Notre Dame being in this spot that they're in, which was number 10.
Where's the U?
18.
Oh. Yeah.
The issue with Notre Dame is that they have 2 losses, Craig. And so why are we elevating them to this level based on those 2 losses?
Because it's Notre Dame. They got money and they get eyeballs, and this is a TV product as well as a college football product.
Well, their 2 losses are Texas A&M and Miami, and we had a really strong argument for them being not excusing those losses, but us really having a caveat on those losses before Miami lost to SMU last week. Now, as it stands, you have the number 3 team, arguably in the nation, and then you have number 18 Miami as your 2 losses if you're Notre Dame. I think that there's a significant chance that Notre Dame gets into the college football playoff. And the committee has just proven it to us. If we look at what's ahead of them on their schedule, I think there's a better chance that they're going to end up 10-2. And right now they're already in the initial college football playoff ranking in the driver's seat to make it. Now, right now, it also appears that outside of that top 10 is where the cut line exists.
Yep.
Because Virginia, the highest ranked ACC team, is not in the top 12. And Memphis, the highest fly like a G6 team, is not ranked at all. But because they are the highest ranked, or the fifth highest ranked conference champion, here they come, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to bump Texas and Oklahoma as it currently stands. As you're looking down the list, Craig, what do you see that jumps off to you? Notre Dame is the number one thing that jumps off to me.
Yeah. So what I think it reaffirms what we've talked about quite a bit. You know, Big Ten is top heavy with Ohio State and Indiana right there. The SEC we talk about, like, it's literally like almost like the middle eight now, isn't it? We've got four teams in the playoff. Texas and Oklahoma are knocking on the door. Vanderbilt, outside chance, kind of looking in there. But you know, we've got about 6 or 7 teams that are there right away. My biggest takeaway: look out, ACC and Jim Phillips. The Big 12 is for real. I think the Texas Tech money. There's going to be a big game in Lubbock this weekend. Shout out to my buddy Andrew McCleary, who will be excited for that one. But BYU and Texas Tech slotting themselves right in behind the Big Four of the SEC, I think is huge, and I think that tells me quite a bit. I had initially thought, oh my goodness, is the ACC going to be out there? But you look at the ACC, it's a one bid league. The biggest opportunity for the ACC to make a move is going to be at the end of the year when Georgia Tech hosts Georgia at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where if Georgia Tech can pull off that upset, maybe, just maybe, if they don't win the ACC championship, the ACC can be a 2-bid league.
I think that's where we're going to get into a lot of questions, and that's where I am. I'm perplexed, Craig, because when it comes to the ACC and the Big 12, I think we have one-bid leagues, but we saw last year where the ACC should have been a one-bid league, and they were able to squeeze 2 in because of how things shook out in the championship game. I don't think they were going to know until we get to championship weekend exactly how this is going to play out. Also, hello to Michael Ray Lynn over in the chat box. It is not Sunday, my friend, but we could not go a night where the College Football Playoff Committee gives us an initial ranking and not come on here and talk about it with you guys. We have some amazing guests lined up. Let me say this here at 9:08 on SEC Sunday night. We are presented by Hewitt Damaduros Law, HDLawSC.com, and as always, we love Brad and we love Dean, but here's the thing that we know about them is that they're going to love you as well, and that you're not just another caseload for them. You're not just a number. You're not a paycheck. They've won tens of millions of dollars for their clients, and they want to get to know you. They want to hear your story, and they can defend you better than we can defend the SEC. And that's saying something because we're pretty good. Okay, so make sure that if you need them for personal injury or anything related to that sort, it's HDLawSC.com. Don't go to the guy on the billboard. Don't go to the guy on the commercial. You're never going to talk to that person. But if you go to HDLawSC.com, you will talk to Brad or Dean. So make sure that you go and check that out. Hewitt Damaduros Law, proudly presenting SEC Sunday night. Now, we've got a guest list coming up. We've got Memphis Spence coming on. He's in the press conference right now with the College Football Playoff Committee. We're going to get a fresh reaction to that later in the second half of the hour. We're going to have Casey Cregan here with us, who is a good friend always here from the Message Board Genius podcast, representing this ACC. We're also going to get Drew Crabtree in here so that we can react and go back and forth about who is the stronger conference, the Big Ten or the SEC. But before we get to that, Craig, your thoughts as we start to see this thing unfold.
Yeah, do you have the graphic up where we can look at the first round of the playoffs? Because here's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So if we're looking at just the SEC, we have been talking now for 2 years about Ole Miss finally hosting a game. Well, based on our results right here, Ole Miss gets the number 6 spot, and they would be hosting Virginia. Sorry, Hoos. I don't think anybody wants to see that, but my goodness. Can you imagine the Vaught and the Grove in December. Is that the night game? Like where do you see these 4 games? Let's take a look at these 4 games first. Where are these games? Where's the Friday night game? Where's the Saturday afternoon? Where's Saturday? Where's that middle one?
I think that the Friday night game is one of those top two here in this image. The Friday night game for me is Texas Tech and Oregon, or it's BYU and Notre Dame.
Yep.
I think that Notre Dame has the standalone power in terms of a fan base and viewership to kind of dominate that Friday night, and so there's a chance that they could put that one there.
Yep.
I also just kind of with Oregon and Texas Tech, you kind of have that different element. I think you have West Coast with with Oregon, you kind of got the new blood there with Texas Tech. There's going to be some excitement.
Yep.
I think that one has a lot of power to stand on its own as well. And then you're going to get these SEC matchups, I think, in the noon and the evening slot. I think there's a chance this game between Georgia and Memphis could be there's a potential for the noon game.
I think that looks like the noon game. I'm going BYU Notre Dame for my Friday night game. I think that would be awesome. And out there in Utah with the mountains, I think BYU is one of the coolest spots. But again, that's going to be a lot of eyeballs there. BYU's got a huge fan base. Notre Dame obviously has got that big fan base. I really like that Texas Tech Oregon matchup as well. Like that's an interesting one. Like to me, that's like got Alamo Bowl, like our from a few years ago, kind of already written on that. But looking at the 2 SEC games, we've been talking about this. This is why we have home games in the first round. This is why we should have home games in the semifinals. Athens and Oxford will be rocking for that. And again, I probably look at one of those as a noon kick. Probably Georgia Memphis, I would say, where you probably have the Ole Miss game. I think one of these SEC games is the 7:30 or the 8 kick, though. I think you got to have it. Maybe it's between the hedges.
I don't know. I kind of would lean towards Oxford in terms of matchup. I think that's probably where I'm going. And Lane Kiffin's name is kind of the draw right now, and so that's why I would lean towards that game being the night game. But it is really interesting. What I do know is that we can sit here and talk about this all day, but the odds that this ends up being the actual matchups that we get are few and far between. And so while this is a fun exercise, I'm not sure that it really gets us super far, other than it starts to help us kind of break down the tiering of how we're going to see these conferences snatched up by the networks, which has been one of our favorite topics for such a long time, has been to discuss this process of ESPN and then CBS, NBC, Fox, however that's broken out, grabbing these schools, these conferences, and what time slots they're going to go into. How are we trying to market what it is that we're trying to do to grab viewership? The college football playoff takes on a different life, I think, because it's so ESPN dominated, and you're going to get every eyeball in the country when it comes to these teams and these games. Which game in terms of this matchup? I'll ask this one question, Craig, before we get ready to bring in some guests. Which one of these games do you feel like draws the least eyes?
I think as it stands right now, you would look at the Ole Miss versus Virginia. I don't think Virginia is gonna pull it. I think BYU at Notre Dame obviously is going to be a big one. And I think this would be the argument would be the Georgia Memphis. I know we talked about that possibly as a noon slate, but Georgia and Athens at night has been special. It's a peanut butter and chocolate for ESPN. You look at it, Alabama was at night. You've got Ole Miss. Ole Miss was at 3:30, but we have Texas coming up in 2 weeks at night. I think something about being in Athens is something special. That Texas Tech Oregon game, I think all of these are big. But if I'm looking and I'm ESPN, I am afraid for Indiana being my number 2 seed. Last year we take a look at it. All 4 of our top seeds lost in their bowl game, including my beloved Bulldogs. Ohio State looks invincible as of right now. I don't think that would be much of a challenge. But I got to be worried about Indiana. They've been smashing everybody and they've been beating everybody. But I'm sorry, I still feel like it. It's Indiana. It's
Okay.
not impressive. It's not sexy. Fernando Mendoza, Kirk Cinetti, it's been beautiful. It's a great story, but I don't think I don't think it's bringing in eyeballs, especially if you have BYU or Notre Dame. We already saw Notre Dame, Indiana last year. It was nice, but at the end of the day, Notre Dame, kind of showed them who was boss.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that when it comes to networking and marketing, we have always had thoughts, but no one has better thoughts and better ways of explaining this than our friend Memphis Spence. And I can see that he has popped in here with us fresh out of the press conference. So let's go ahead and bring Spence into the conversation. Spence, first of all, what a night it is in college football as we see the college football playoff rankings coming out. And I love your shirt, by the way, as we have the top ranks fly like a G6, as Craig would call them, not a G5, but a G6. Memphis Tigers ready to crash the playoffs. And right now, as we just explored with the graphic from ESPN in a matchup with Georgia. First of all, your reaction, Spence, overall, and then just kind of give us an overview of what was going on in the press conference.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see if you feel like I did, because listening to Reese Davis talk to Mack Rhodes on ESPN gave me more confidence in this committee than I ever had with Ward Manuel.
Well, yes and no. First, there are a couple of folks that wanted me to give them a shout out. My guy Van and Trey. Shout out to you guys. Keep watching this show. You'll learn something. Here's the thing about this committee. This is a different committee. They're doing things differently. For the first time that I can remember, when I've been on, I've been on all of these pressers for the College Football Playoff Committee from the beginning. This is the first time that I've heard that an evaluation tool was actually the players on the field. I've heard a lot of different things that they were evaluating. First of all, they wanted to make sure no AP, we're not looking at your, rankings anymore. No FWAA, NFF, we're not looking at your rankings anymore. In the past, they have, but they are not doing that anymore. That's not something that's going to happen. But this is the first time that I've actually heard, they actually made mention of Notre Dame having the best backfield in the country, which is one of the reasons why on their notes they had them at 10. And I was like, oh, we're evaluating players now? Because player evaluation was never a criteria, but if you're talking about the eye test and player evaluation now is something that goes into, how good they think the team is, now we have something. Now this is a completely different evaluation process than I've seen in the past. And they're saying that they're not weighting anything heavier than anything else, other than the fact that they did make a note of this, and I want to make sure I get this right. When they're looking at strength of schedule, they started weighting the stronger teams on the schedule, making those games a little bit more consequential than the others. So if you're on their ranking, wherever you are on the field, if you're playing a team that's ranked, that has more consequence in their strength of schedule. They're weighting those games more so than the others. And it's something that I actually do with my FWA Super 16. I do look at this is a game of consequence. That's what I call it. But they're actually doing that there now. They're just they're saying that, the bigger games, when Indiana, like they said, when Indiana went to Oregon, they weighted that heavier than some of Indiana's other opponents. And I was like, okay, I can understand that. I do have, there were some other questions, but we'll get to those. Craig, you have a question?
Yeah. So it seems to me are those competing thoughts? When we're looking at rankings, we're not going to look at we're not going to look at the AP rankings, because we're going to look at this other criteria. Yeah, when we look at quality wins, when we look at what that Oregon-Indiana matchup is, we're going to look at what the ranking was there.
It's not the AP. They're not going to look at the AP ranking.
They're going to look at
They're not going to look at the FWAA NFF ranking or the coaches poll. The three media polls, they're not going to look at any of those. They actually have all these teams ranked themselves. They're looking at where they have them ranked, and that's the game of consequence. Like you noticed, Memphis in most of these polls, well, not in the Super 16, but in the coaches and in the AP is ranked. They're not ranked on at all. No G5 team is ranked in their poll. So they're literally looking at their own poll that they have ranked, and they're giving those teams a little bit more consequence if you play and beat or win or lose against those teams, because they also brought up something on which seems like a conflict to me. They kind of cut it off early before they could get to my question, but when you're up against ESPN and CBS and On3 and Yahoo, who's Sports Radio America, but
we know,
yeah, we're good enough to get in. You just get our questions answered. Maybe not. Maybe next week. But they did say something about, because my question was, okay, I see Virginia and Louisville ranked lower than Utah. How did you come to Utah being a stronger team or having a stronger, ranking than either of those two teams? We never really got to that. But they did mention this. They pointed out that the win that Virginia had against FSU, they weren't counting as a quality win anymore. Although the losses that Notre Dame had before that, at the beginning of the year, those were quality losses. And so, the logic in my mind is like, how does that work? Now I know they only lost, and they didn't mention the point differential. The two losses were just by a few points. And maybe they were looking at the point differential in those losses. They did also mention that Virginia, the overtime wins that Virginia had, and, not necessarily that didn't give them comfort. And so
comfort.
Yeah, right. Well, but it's one of those things that you look at and you're like, okay, well, if you're not counting a quality win at FSU, and I guess maybe you shouldn't, are these quality losses? Those teams are kind of strong. Miami's still kind of strong. Texas A&M is one of the strongest teams in the nation.
But it has to be the justification for Notre Dame being in the top 10. I think that, one of the things that we said before you came on, Spence, was like they're in the driver's seat now to crash this playoff.
Yeah.
Because they're already in by being at number 10. It doesn't look like they're going to lose unless they screw it up. So there's, in theory, now we've been proven wrong before, but in theory, that means they wouldn't fall out. Unless we're going to backpedal and say, well, what if Miami loses another game? And then that loss becomes a worse loss. Here's the thing that I think that you highlighted, Spence, and then I'll kick it right back to you, is that you mentioned a minute ago that because we're doing player evaluations, and here we go with like ranking these quality of wins and losses, we're really relying on the eye test. And I do not trust this committee ever to use their eyes to evaluate football.
Who hurt South Carolina last year, Rob? Who hurt South Carolina last year?
That's not even what I mean. It's going to be so unbelievably inconsistent, and that's my problem with it. If we're going to use the eye test, we need people who are really watching football and are going to be tuned in, or we need a stronger weight on the metrics so that we can bring some consistency to what we're doing here. Because right now, with Ohio State being ranked ahead of Indiana and ahead of Texas A&M, the only reason you're doing that is because they look more impressive. So what happens when they don't?
Yes, actually. So all right, they wanted to make sure that, because, us journalists, we'll ask the questions that everybody else is thinking. And they wanted to make sure that we knew right off that they were watching every game and they have film on every game and they review every game, because they actually had a typed out statement that took up the first 4 or 5 minutes of the presser. It's like, well, okay, let us read this so that and we won't have to read this every single presser from now on. But they said, hey, we watch every game, we have film on every game, and we are evaluating every game on a game-to-game basis. So they're saying that they watch every single one of these games, which, I mean, if that's the only thing that you have to do, maybe you can do that. I know that I put in about 25 to 30 hours specifically a week because I rank I do player evaluation. I vote on 10 of the 24 player awards. So I'm doing a lot during the week. Here's the thing, though. And I completely understand what you're saying, Rob, because the eye test, and somebody brought this up from On3. Somebody said, hey, well, I know you're putting a whole lot of weight, or you've mentioned it a few times that you're evaluating the actual players on the field. Do you rely heavily on the actual coaches or former coaches or the people on the committee that may have a little bit more talent doing that? And the answer basically was, well, they started off, know your strengths. Know your strengths, know your strengths. But everybody on the committee they feel is qualified to do player evaluation and everything else. And I was like, all right, well, there's the answer. Whether or not that satisfies me or you, Rob, or you, Craig, on whether or not they can do evaluation, and it maybe. Maybe I trust the coaches more so I would say, hey, I would lean on the three coaches or former coaches that are on the committee a little bit more than somebody else on the committee that may have never done player evaluation. But those were some of the interesting points that came out of this first committee, and of course there'll be more.
So one of the things I would think about, again, if I put on my athletic directing hat for a minute, Huddle can always give you a report of how much the kids are watching the film. So maybe Macros needs to pass out next week in the notes. This is but in all seriousness, I want to look at this. The SEC, Big Ten's got the top 2 spots. The SEC's got that middle 7, middle 8 that I think are going to be in contention for those spots.
Yep.
Let's take a quick minute. We got Georgia. We got Ole Miss with home games. Alabama and Texas A&M got those buys. Is there anybody outside of there that you feel can go there? We got Texas and Oklahoma have got long roads. They've got 3 games left, but both have some pretty serious issues. What were your thoughts on where the SEC's at?
Who is? Are you asking who has a long shot that's not listed? Because if so, I would say Vanderbilt probably has a good long shot as I look at what's going on and where they have them. Vandy's ranked 16th right now, which is really just outside the purview. However, when you look at the rest of their schedule, and I can't believe I'm saying this about Vandy, they could win out.
I think Tennessee should pose the only real threat to them, if we're being honest.
Yep.
Exactly. So I'm just like, well, Vandy could win out and find themselves in the sneaking in the back door of this college football playoff, which I guarantee you guys, in the 15, 16 years I've been doing this, I've never said that before. This is the first time on your show that I've said that Vanderbilt has any kind of playoff hopes. But here we are. This is 2025. It's a new world out there, and Vandy seems to be in a dark horse position on the inside pole, basically, of the college football playoffs. They actually have a shot at getting into this thing.
Georgia's got a tough road too. They've got Mississippi State. Mississippi State's going to be no joke. Mississippi State's going to come to play at 11 a.m. on Saturday.
We've said that all year. We've said that all year. They're not going to have a good record, but they're a tough out for everybody that they play.
They're going to be tough out. You got Texas in 2 weeks, and then closing at Georgia Tech. Those are 3 potholes where Georgia could go from number 5 to being one of those first two teams out if you lose one of those games. Because I don't know if a 3-loss team is going to make it.
No, I don't think a 3-loss team is, given the way that it's shaking out right now. But
probably not.
There was a chance.
Unless they win their conference. If they win their conference, they're one of their top 5 highest, and they're conference champs. They may have 3 losses and still get in, but that's the only way.
Yeah. Is there a path Do we see a path to 5 SEC teams here?
Tough road.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible though. It's actually possible. I mean, I could see Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Vandy sneaking in the back door, and then either Oklahoma or Texas. I don't think both Oklahoma and Texas get in. Just looking at their schedule.
Yep.
Well, and
So
you
I
didn't
think
mention A&M right there.
A&M's already. Well, A&M's already in. Actually, I mean, I don't. A&M would have to do something egregious. Which
Well, you don't have
It is
cross
Texas
matchup.
A&M, Memphis. It is Texas A&M.
Here's the thing that gives me hope there is that you don't have any cross. Correct me if I'm wrong, but between those top 4 teams, which would be Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss, the top 4 in the SEC, there's no cross matchups remaining.
No, they've already played.
Correct.
They've already played.
Correct.
That's right.
So
That's
in
right,
theory,
Robert.
all 4 teams can finish the regular season with the loss column staying the same.
Correct.
And if that happens and none of those teams play Vanderbilt, and then Vanderbilt sneaks in, there's your path.
Yeah.
I think so. What I think you're really looking at, the path to 5. BYU and Texas Tech are going to be playing each other. That's we're going to have
That's a knockout game.
Yep, that's going to be a knockout game. Oregon has a tough road kind of left. I believe they go to Iowa, and then they also are still have USC, which may or may not be an issue. And then the question becomes Notre Dame. What you're going to have is those 4 teams between 7 and 10 are the ones that are really going to be problematic, and that is the only way you're going to have you're going to have the top 4 win out, and then it's going to be either Oklahoma or Vandy, because if Texas A&M wins out, unless you the only way I think you also get a 5th one in, and then you get Texas in, and this is not my arch bias, but if A&M goes undefeated, and then Texas knocks off A&M in Austin to end the season, that could get you to 5, assuming Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss all went out as well.
Yeah. I think, you have this, you mentioned BYU, Texas Tech, and our friend Stu Mandel here obviously gives it to us that if they play twice and they split, that creates a problem for the SEC path to 5.
I agree.
Because then you have a world where they're both going to get in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here's the interesting. When I look at Texas's schedule, and I mean, they got the win over Vandy. So Texas and Vandy aren't going to be in at the same time.
Nope.
But they have to see Georgia at Georgia. Yeah. That's for Texas. That's going to be rough.
That's going to be rough.
They got an Arkansas team that has nothing to lose, literally nothing. And then they got Texas A&M. And I mean, and that's the only Texas A&M. I mean, if when I'm looking at Texas A&M schedule, I'm like, they could probably. I mean, they should be able to handle Missouri. Yep. South Carolina could surprise them. They're athletic enough, but they should be able to handle. If the way they beat Florida is what I think is going to happen in the South Carolina game, just because I know Florida and South Carolina have the same type of athleticism and physicality. So I'm like, okay, if they can beat Florida that way, then you can probably beat South Carolina. Stanford, it's Stanford. It's not Stanford, it's Stanford. So it's almost a bye game. You shouldn't lose that. At Texas is going to be the roughest game for Texas A&M. That's why I think they're in. A one-loss SEC team that's at what, 3 now? Yep. Even if you lose that game to Texas, and Texas, for whatever reason, doesn't make it in, you're still in if you're Texas A&M. Texas A&M is actually in the field. I don't think that there's a way that they drop out unless they go and blow it at Missouri and then look really bad at South Carolina. Not a definitive win, maybe an overtime win, because this committee is looking at, just like they did with Virginia, they're like, 3, they're going to overtime to win too much. We don't feel comfortable. They could start that with Texas A&M also. And then they lose to Texas. If it looks like that on the way out, 2 losses, what do they call in spades? 2 and a possible. 2 losses, and I didn't really like that win. I didn't like that they went into overtime just to win that. Then maybe Texas A&M could be out, but otherwise, I think Texas is in. They get 2 wins. They get the win at Missouri. They get South Carolina. Even if they lost to Texas at the end of the year, I think they're out.
We don't have time to get into like matchup breakdowns about all of that right now. But the one thing that I'll say is that Texas's offensive line has been suspect this year, and then you put them against the defensive front of Texas A&M, and I think that spells trouble for Arch Manning, despite the talent that Texas has and how well they're playing right now. That matchup specifically,
I will say it depends on what
league. That's going to be an issue.
It depends on what Texas A&M team shows up.
That's true.
Because I have seen Texas A&M give up 40+ points to Notre Dame.
Yes,
you've seen that you've seen that defense locked down. But again, that was against Hugh Freeze's Auburn, and we all know what happened to Hugh Freeze's Auburn. But like you've seen that Texas A&M be very much Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yep. And again, you put them in Austin. Even if Texas loses to Georgia in 2 weeks, they knock off Texas A&M. They could have a case for 9-3. You could.
I think the committee might put them in over Vanderbilt just because.
Yeah, I think so too. I think eyeballs.
Using the eye test and player evaluation, they could. I mean, it's Texas.
Let's not forget.
Well, Craig said to start the show that we're going to evaluate based on this and how many viewers we can get, and I think you're going to get more for the Aggies than you can be for those Commodores who have a pretty small alumni base. Hey,
let's be important though. Let's remember those important things. The most important piece of the eye test: how many viewers are you going to get? This committee does not want This committee does not want a college football playoff with Indiana and Vanderbilt in it. They will deal with one. They do not want 2.
They can't stop Indiana, and we're getting a little outside of the SEC, and that's the question that I want to close here with Spence before we get you out of here. We obviously know where your heart is. We've talked a lot about what the committee had to say. We've talked a lot about how we can step back and remove our bias. But from your standpoint, outside of the Power Four, what's the path for Memphis to close this thing out?
Win out. I mean, Memphis just has to win the American Athletic Conference and not lose any ridiculous games. I even think that there's a possibility that Memphis could still be the highest ranked team in any conference. Well, maybe, I don't know. I think the way this committee's doing stuff, we could lose to Tulane, win out, win the conference, and still probably be in if we win the conference and we're still the highest ranked. I don't think they're going to rank. There's been a lot of James Madison this and James Madison that. The way that they were talking today, I don't think they're going to be looking too heavily at James Madison. Or if they're doing it like they said they were going to do, is weight, the highest teams, the ranked teams, who's James Madison played. I mean, seriously, they haven't. They haven't won against any high ranked. I mean, they played Louisville, but they lost by 14. I mean, they haven't won against any highly ranked team. So I don't know if that's going to count for anything.
Okay, I lied. I said that was going to be my last question, but I'm going to ask you one more, and then we're going to get you out of here. That is Memphis related. Which SEC team is Ryan Silverfield coaching for next year?
There's hopefully none. But there is rumor about Arkansas, and I would hate to see him go. But he is a great offensive line coach and a pretty good manager of coaches also. He doesn't get – he's one of those guys that you can put guys around him, and he's okay. He feels comfortable with that. He doesn't get threatened by people around me. I think they're going to stick with Bobby P. I don't see. I could see him, Bobby P, and Silverfield button heads because Bobby P's not going to like it. He might walk, but Silverfield, he's cool, low ego guy. Put him around anybody. He's confident in what he does well, and he's had Memphis. I don't know how many running backs we put in the league just because we have an offensive line that looks SEC-ish every year. And I even though if we get in at 12, I don't want to see Georgia. That's the last team I want to see. I would play Texas before Georgia. But if that happens, we'd at least compete.
You
No,
want to go down to
Oxford,
Oxford. Memphis has better luck. Memphis has better luck in Oxford than they do in Athens.
Oxford, I'll take anybody except for, I mean, Georgia is a terrible matchup for us. I take any of the other SEC teams right now, even Alabama, over Georgia.
Well, we'll see how it unfolds. If we know anything, we know that this is the first one, and that doesn't really tell us at all what the last one's going to look like. So thank you to Memphis Spence, Sports Radio America, for being here straight out of the press conference, giving us exactly what we needed to hear. We're going to hit the break, and we'll be right back to tussle with Drew and Casey about what the best conference in the country is. And I think the title of the show should tell us what that is. We'll be right back on SEC Sunday night.
At TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, we believe true health and peak performance start with personalized care. Whether you're an athlete recovering from injury or just chasing your next personal best, we're here to guide your journey. With expert coaching, hands-on therapy, and transparent cash-based pricing, you get the care you need without the insurance red tape. One client drove 100 miles just to see us and said it was worth every mile. Contact us at trifitperformance.com or 803-353-5619. TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, where recovery meets results.
When playing sports, you want a coach that will fight for you. At Hewitt Diamaduros Law Firm, we've got your back. Whether it's personal injury, insurance disputes, negligence, or wrongful death, our team delivers exceptional legal services that makes meaningful difference in the lives of the individuals and families we work for. Visit hdlawsc.com. hdlawsc.com. Hewitt Diamaduros, we're on your team. This is SEC Sunday night on the Chiefs Sports Network.
Welcome back to SEC Sunday night on a Tuesday. College football playoff rankings are here, and we just had a phenomenal discussion with Memphis Spence, our friend Sports Radio America, straight out of the press conference. We are live here on the Chief Sports Network, presented proudly by Hewitt Diamaduros Law, hdlawsc.com. We now have with us our friends Drew Crabtree, and you know him well, Casey Cregan from the Message Board Genius podcast. And Drew writes with Last Word on College Football, covering the Big Ten and also specifically Ohio State, as you can see Jeremiah Smith in his background there. And my first question for everybody, if you have to bet right now, you got to put 10 grand on the Big Ten or the SEC to win the national championship, given where we stand with the first college football playoff ranking reveal. Bet with your head, not with your heart, gentlemen. Which conference are you putting 10 grand on?
The MAC, because it's MACtion,
yes,
baby.
Sir. We got MACtion going on.
What a cop out!
No, it's
a real answer.
I don't do the conference pride. I don't care what the rest of the Big Ten does when it comes to these tournaments. It's Buckeyes or nothing for me. And yeah, if I had 10 grand to place, I'd still ride with Ohio State going back to back. Honestly, the SEC will be able to pack the court, but I'm still taking Ohio State.
And I'm a little bit less biased than Drew, I think, but I think I would put my money on Ohio State again too until proven otherwise. I just think they're loaded still. Julian Sayin has been fantastic for them. I still put my money on Ohio State right now, as much as living in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I deal with those Ohio people every day, and I don't like it.
Well, I'll say this before I let Craig talk. Julian Sayin has been really good, and Last Word on College Football has a Heisman poll coming out tomorrow that saw him significantly jump above the 5th spot this week. So make sure that you guys check that out tomorrow morning. I'm not sure. Some bum. Craig, who would you Who would you put your money on, SEC, Big Ten?
In the words of Forrest Gump, Alabama. Yes, Alabama will knock off the Tide in the national championship. Restore
Alabama will
order.
knock off the Tide.
I'm sorry.
That
will
belongs
knock
on
off
the boards.
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. It is late. Alabama will knock off the Buckeyes in the national championship, and Alabama will return the national championship to its rightful place in the Southeastern Conference. Now, Drew, if I were to ask you who's going to win the game in November, would it still be Ohio State? Is that still? We're not going to talk about that?
I think that so one of the beat writers, Bill Rabinowitz, came out with an awesome book. He's come out with a book for every time Ohio State's won the national title the last 3 times, so 02, 14 in this last one.
Yeah.
And he had a really good insight on there was a players only meeting, including Ryan Day, after that Michigan loss last year, and the players held him to account for what happened, and Day literally said that their game plan against Michigan was the dumbest thing in the world, and I do think that they learned their lesson. So I think that this year the Buckeyes do. I think they matched up well the last few years anyway, but I think this year they definitely match up well against Michigan. If they let Julian Sand throw the ball 40 times, they should be okay. Now, once we actually get there, and if he gets out of his head, if Day and Hartline get out of their head and try not to beat Michigan's way, they should be all right.
No, I'm just giving you a hard time. Ohio State is they're definitely a juggernaut this year. I do think Alabama's probably the best in the class of the SEC. I do not trust Texas A&M enough, and as much as I love my dogs, they are not giving me the utmost confidence to do so. Oh, Rob's on mute. I actually kind of like that, so maybe we could just go with that.
Sorry, I'm the live tweeting and the typing and the muting and the unmuting. A lot of buttons. You know what we said at the beginning of the year that I think really stands out at this point is that week 1 is always overreaction week. And immediately we begin to formulate these hard and fast opinions, maybe not us, but the college football landscape as a whole, hard and fast opinions about teams based on what they do in week 1. We had a lot of opinions, strong positive opinions about LSU after week 1, and those have proven to be false. Midway through the season, there was a lot of people that were heavy on the Miami bandwagon, and while they may still have somewhat of a path to sneak in if the ACC implodes, and I want to get to that in just a minute about the competition level that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks in the Atlantic Coast Conference, there's maybe a path for Miami, but there were people saying that they were the best team in the country, and from a talent standpoint and the way they were handling their business, it was a strong argument. I think that no matter what, this year has shown us, we've used the word parity so many times, we are overreacting every single week. This has not been a week 1 problem for us in 2025. It's been a consistent problem throughout the course of the season where we're reacting based on how teams perform week in and week out. My article that's coming out tomorrow morning with the Heisman poll is a direct reflection as Julian Sand jumped from 5th, I'll spoil it, to 1st because he goes out and has an insane game against Penn State. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to voting for the Heisman or the college football playoff, ranking these teams, it should be a body of work discussion, should it not? And we are so easily swayed, and I think that that's the thing. We just talked about it with Spence, and I'm going to keep harping on it because I saw it. This is my shtick. It's my soapbox. I'm going to keep coming back to it. If they run off the eye test to the degree that we saw them run off the eye test tonight and the words that were spoken for them to run, that they're going to evaluate based on the eye test, we are in for the most topsy-turvy, back and forth, switch it around rankings if a little bit of chaos happens. And if we know anything, there's been chaos this season. There have been plenty of weeks where Craig and I have texted each other before the weekend started and said, this week looks boring. Nothing's going to happen. He did it this week. Every time there have been upsets. Every single time. And if that happens, what in the world are we doing? What are we doing with Ole Miss on a week when they beat Washington State by the skin of their teeth because they're looking ahead? Are we going to eye test them and downgrade them because of games? I'm just using them as an example. It could be anybody. What happens if Indiana doesn't play Penn State as strongly as Ohio State did? Does that like pour concrete around the fact that those two teams are going to be separated until we get to the championship weekend?
What happens if Cignetti smashes Penn State unlike Ohio State did in the first half?
Yep, that's a fair point as well. Do they make the jump because they beat them worse? Go ahead, Drew.
No, yeah, that although the score in the first half was definitely a lot closer than the game itself was, because Ohio State had the ball and they had started to drive to get that double dip, and on that first carry, CJ Donaldson fumbled it and allowed Penn State to score on a short field. So yeah, it was 1 point, but then Penn State scored 14 points, which is the most that anyone has scored on Ohio State all year, and then Ohio State held them off the board in the second half and only allowed them, I think, 60 yards, and most of them came on the final drive. But I do think so. The difference here, I think, between Ohio State and Indiana, on a number of reasons, is Ohio State has slowed their game down. They play incredibly slowly this year. They run, I believe, the fourth or the fifth fewest plays all year. Like, they're in the same stratosphere as Kent State and Wisconsin and all of those other awful offenses. They're significantly more efficient because they're scoring, but they're content with literally just being methodical, matriculating down the field, doing their job, getting it taken care of. Because obviously they can turn around and trust the defense isn't gonna blow it. Whereas Indiana doesn't have the cachet that Ohio State does, just in general, other than being the reigning national champs. They know that they have to go into these games and they have to have these style points, because Indiana is still Indiana. Yep. Ole Miss is Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin being Lane Kiffin. Like, historically, what have they been? So they have to fight for their right to party, literally. So I do think that Penn State is still back against the wall, and they do still have talent, but they're just not a good team right now. And it would not surprise me in the slightest if Indiana ends up beating Penn State by more than what Ohio State did. Whether or not Penn State scores more on them, I don't think that. I think it's probably going to be pretty similar, 1 or 2 touchdowns. I like both of their running backs. I like Singleton and Katron Allen, but their quarterback is a little green around the gills right now. But no, it wouldn't surprise me, because Curt Cignetti he's out to make a statement. And even if that Penn State game isn't the top 5, top 10 matchup that everyone expected, Indiana is trying to show that they belong with the elites of the sport, and they're gonna try to pour it on.
Are you seeing, Drew, as you look at the Big Ten, we've obviously got top 2, Ohio State, Indiana 1, 2. Oregon's in there at number 9. Is it a 3-bid league this year? Is there any concern that it could fall to a 2-bid, or do you think it could expand to a 4? Is there a door one way or the other of a sliding door here?
I can tell you how it expands to 4, Drew.
Yeah, I can definitely expand to 4, Rob. And I sure hope the team with the ugly helmets don't end up squeaking in.
That's the way.
There's definitely an avenue for 2 bids, and there's also an avenue for 4. Like Oregon, this year they ain't beaten anybody. Like, I like Oregon. I like the talent on the team. I like everything about them, but they haven't beaten anybody.
And Matt Rhodes just said that on ESPN.
Right. And so, like, the last 4 games, they're at Iowa, who is now ranked, which is surprising to me, to be honest, because the AP poll doesn't have them ranked, but the College Football Playoff does. They're at Iowa. They got Minnesota. Meh. I really like their quarterback, Drake Lindsey. Minnesota is bowl eligible. But then after that, they got USC and they got Washington. There's a non-zero chance that they drop all 4 just because of how it can be, and that would definitely hurt the Big Ten's chances to have 3 or 4 teams. But, like, USC has Oregon and Iowa. Iowa has Oregon and USC. Michigan obviously has Ohio State, and they have a bye I think they have a bye this week. And then Washington, who is down there, their only test is that Oregon team. So there is a possibility that a couple teams squeak in, but I think it's probably more likely that it's only 2 teams than there is 4 because of the gauntlet, I guess, if you want to call it that Oregon has to run over this last month.
I agree. I think for the gauntlet, and that's a good way of putting it for Oregon, because you do have some interesting matchups in there. Mike Morgan and J.C. Sherbert said this morning on right here on College Football Forever on their show. It was on at 9 this morning, and kind of went through the matchups. That USC Oregon matchup is extremely interesting to me because you get that old Pac-12, but Oregon hasn't, and they made this point, and I would second it. Oregon hasn't looked as dominant or as impressive as they did last year, even in the wins, and that's been a lot of what this committee has said that they're looking at. You just don't know about USC. You really we just don't know from week to week, I don't think, and we don't. That's Lincoln Riley in a nutshell. And then that rivalry game between, I think, Oregon and Washington can go in any direction any given year. If they drop a couple of games, I think you're right. What becomes the national narrative, Drew, from your perspective, if the Big Ten only gets in the top 2 teams in the country?
No, I think it'll just be the Big Ten is just incredibly top heavy. And then obviously people won't give Indiana their flowers unless Indiana, wins a playoff game or 2, because that's just how it is. When you have a newcomer, they have to win. They have to be the man to be the man, essentially. Like Indiana can make it and they can be a top 4 seed, but if they get beat in the quarterfinals, people will be like, well, it's still Indiana. So yeah, if there's only two Big Ten teams and it's Ohio State and Indiana, and they're 2 of the top 4 seeds or whatever it is, it's going to be, people will say, and it's right to say it, it's a top heavy league. That's the criticism that a lot of Big Ten fans have had about the SEC over the years. It's Alabama and Georgia, or it's Georgia and LSU, or it's whatever it is, a bunch of right in the middle that get ranked to kind of, help out their resumes, whereas the Big Ten doesn't really get that benefit of the doubt usually. This year, with this ranking, all the 2-loss Big Ten teams are actually ranked. But no, the major narrative is going to be that the Big Ten is top heavy, and then it'll be on Ohio State and Indiana to progress through the playoff, to be like, who cares? We're still elite. Obviously, if they lose in that first game, then it'll all be for naught. But
all right, Casey, I want to jump over to you as we talk a little bit about the ACC here, because Craig and I talked with Memphis about the Big 12 and what's happening there with BYU and Texas Tech, and the Big 12 has been highly competitive for years. Now we have a situation with the ACC where every game, every week from this point forward looks like it matters. We have mini playoff type of environments happening in that league because you have 5 teams in the College Football Playoff ranking. You have Pitt, Miami, Georgia Tech, Louisville, and Vanderbilt. UVA.
Notre Dame.
Correct me if I'm wrong. All 5 are well in contention to play in Charlotte. They're all one loss conference teams, right?
1 loss conference. Miami's got 2 losses in the conference, don't they?
They do.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, and UVA. Let me make that correction.
UVA's
Virginia's loss was not a conference loss.
Correct.
Even though it was NC State, it was a non-conference matchup.
Yeah. But yeah, you look at some of these games that are coming up, and I think honestly, I know Virginia was in there because they have to be, right? And I love watching them. They're fun, and their games all go to overtime, and they mess with my boy's heart, my boy Who's heart, but they're fun. But I think the reality is that Louisville is probably the team based on what they have coming up to end the season with Cal, Clemson at SMU and Kentucky, that that path seems clearer to them, and that's hard for me to say as a Clemson guy. But Clemson gets them next Friday night on the road. I mean, that just that doesn't bode well for Dabo and his boys. I also like Pitt, and if the ACC is going to be a 2-team league, it's probably going to be Pittsburgh because of what they have and the wins that they'll get at the end of the year, playing Notre Dame, at Georgia Tech, and then Miami. I mean, according to the committee, those are the eye test wins, right? Especially if they can put some numbers up on those 3 teams and kind of separate themselves. Heck, if they beat Notre Dame, I think you're going to see them in the rankings next week at somewhere. Maybe not in the 12, but right there, like outside looking in, right? Primed to move right on up. But I think this year, barring something crazy, I think the ACC is a 1-team league, and it'll be whoever wins the championship. And quite honestly, that's what's been fun. We always talked about in the past how the ACC Coastal was kind of crazy. You never knew who you were going to play in the championship game. One year it was 7-5 Pitt, and when Clemson was going on their run, it was just like it was just roulette. We played Virginia; it's got 4 losses. This year it kind of feels the same way, and not as many losses, but it kind of feels the same way. Like you don't even know who's going to play in Charlotte. Normally, you could at least pencil 1 team in. Yep. And then whoever shook out of the Coastal, now that everything's together, I mean it's jumbled, it's parody, it's beautiful, it's fun. But at the end of the day, when this show that you're doing is about the college football playoff, it's probably going to end up being a 1-team league.
And what's crazy about that, you mentioned everybody, but you forgot about my friends in Georgia Tech, and like
they got a tough road too.
No, they have a tough road. And
I mean, they get BC. They get BC at BC, which can be a house of horrors for people. Maybe not this year, 1-8.
1-8. Yeah, I was gonna say
Pitt and then UGA. Though both of those wins, you have Pitt's currently ranked in the committees. I think they're 24, but they're currently ranked. So you beat a ranked Pitt team and then a ranked Georgia team. Yeah, I mean, I hope to see Louisville and Georgia Tech.
Haven't we been telling people to watch out for Narduzzi? Haven't we been saying that?
I feel like it's either fire Narduzzi or watch out for Narduzzi.
And I'll be honest,
either or.
The Pitt message boards are gold, and that's something that being in this business now, I had no idea, but they are truly gold. But that's a case for another day. But yeah, you never know. He's a crazy lunatic. But I kind of want Louisville Pitt in the ACC championship, but then I kind of want Louisville Georgia Tech, and then Pitt Georgia Tech would be fun. And but Pitt and Georgia Tech play each other. I don't know, man. How can you not like the ACC? I don't understand it.
Can I ask one quick question? Is it Louisville or is it Louisville?
Yeah,
it's Louisville.
It's Louisville.
Depends on where you're from.
Right. just curious.
What did I say?
All right. Drew, as we kind of get to close up here, we know that you are not just an Ohio State guy, but you cover the team. You're following it. You're right in there. You know every in and out of what's happening in that program, and you're looking at the conference as a whole. Are you pleased with how this played out tonight? I know I've said it 5 times tonight. I'm going to keep saying it. This is the initial ranking. It doesn't tell us a whole lot other than a couple of tendencies about the committee. It doesn't tell us really anything about how this thing is going to land at the end of the day, but we have to, and we always will, react strongly to every time they put it out. That's why they put it on television. That's why they get a special every week. So your thoughts from the initial ranking, are you pleased from let's say a Big Ten standpoint, because obviously you're pleased from a Buckeye standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, being ranked number 1, Ohio State's nice. Plus also Texas rising up, and then Washington actually being ranked definitely helps. Two ranked wins there. But for the Big Ten, I was surprised that 7th team getting in there. Iowa being ranked 20th was kind of surprising to me, just in general. But there's a whole lot of football left to be played. Like we went through, a lot of the Big Ten, the ranked Big Ten teams play each other. Ohio State's got UCLA. They got Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, and then Michigan. So they've got 3 teams that they should be able to roll over, and then obviously the Michigan game. In Indiana has nothing. they've got Wisconsin, Purdue, and then they've got Penn State this week, who obviously is not what they're supposed to. So from a Big Ten standpoint, it's good because it's going to allow those three teams at the top to bolster their resumes if you need to actually stack resumes. Obviously, if Ohio State or Indiana runs the table, wins the Big Ten, they're going to be undefeated. You don't really have to stack your resume unless it's up against the undefeated SEC champion if A&M ends up doing it. But down there at the lower end, those are your resume builders. You see this with the SEC touting the Tennessee win, who's the only 3-loss team that's ranked right now and stuff like that. So, yeah, from the Big Ten standpoint, it's pretty nice seeing the 7 ranked teams, because the SEC leads with 9, but the Big Ten's not too far there with 7 now. A couple of them are going to get knocked out here soon.
Craig, do you have, from an SEC standpoint, an overall assessment as we get ready to wrap up? I do have a surprise board for Casey that he definitely needs his readers for, and nobody's going to be able to see it. I don't know if I put it in the chat or not, but I'm going to throw it up there in just a second because we did get some news just a moment ago. Craig,
Yep.
thoughts
yeah.
from the SEC?
Yeah, from an SEC perspective, you have everything in front of you. You have 4 teams in. Ideally, those 4 teams are still going to be there. We know that something's going to happen with BYU and Texas Tech. Something may happen with Oregon and Notre Dame. So the door is open for 5, but at the very least, you have 4, and we are ready. We're at least excited for that. So I think that to me is exciting. We've got two home playoff games. The one thing that I will nitpick on the committee for is you have both SEC teams ready to play the other SEC teams in the quarterfinals. Again, if we're thinking about being equitable and spreading the love, I think you want to make sure the SEC teams are kind of like spread out there a little bit. I don't think anybody wants to see BYU, Notre Dame playing at Indiana. Hey, come on, committee, let's get these rankings just right so that we can have an all SEC quarterfinal and an all SEC semifinal. Sorry, Drew. Sorry, Casey.
One thing I want to do before we get out of here is I want to put this up for everybody because we do have a giveaway going on right now. So I want you to be able to go ahead and scan this. And then I'm also going to throw into the live chat for anybody that's over there as well the link if you can't get it to scan for whatever reason. We have weekly segments with our good friend Daily Joy, who's the owner of SEC Pretty. And if you're an SEC fan, then you need SEC Pretty merch. And we have it here for you. It is going to be free. We got a couple of hats. We got a sweatshirt that we're going to give away. And so if you would like to just register for that, it's very, very simple. You just scan this QR code or you click on the link. It's going to give you 4 ways to enter. You can either follow me and Craig on X. You can visit our website, or you can subscribe to our page on YouTube. We're approaching 12,000 subscribers there, so we would appreciate you guys doing that. Continue to follow us. And we are SEC Sunday Night here each and every Sunday night. I understand this is not a Sunday. This is a Tuesday, but we care about you that much that we made a special midweek appearance. And every week we close the show with It Just Means More. Genius. And so tonight we don't have a lot of boards. We don't have a lot of things going on. But we did have LSU filling some gaps today. So we've talked with our friend Daily Joy, who is a proud LSU alum and fan, and proud Louisianan. And last week, I made the statement that LSU was missing 3 key positions: president, athletic director, and head football coach. Today, they have filled 2 of those positions. She let us know that she believed that the president would be hired today. He was, and he made quick work by promoting their interim athletic director, Verge Osbury, moves on up, takes off the interim tag. I know you guys can't read this, but Casey's going to tickle your ears with his beautiful tones and let us know what the LSU faithful think on the message boards as soon as he gets off of mute. You want me to unmute it for you?
No, I was waxing poetic over here. So from Tiger Rant, we have Death Valley Freak 43 just says, just got this from my buddy who is in the know concerning Saban. From Redacted, it says, dude, I think we got Saban. No bullshit. He's here right now. TNR just got back from South Carolina, and when they pulled in, Saban's plane was in the hangar where they keep their plane. They said his pilots were trying to hide it all day. Supposedly second times it's been here in a week. Then this girl, Remy, a friend of mine who's a realtor, said his wife's been here since Sunday looking at house. Supposedly the deal is $80 million for 4 years and guaranteed $30 million a year in NIL money to spend on players. Supposedly the deal is still not signed, but sounds like it's going to happen. I literally can't believe it. I really wanted Gruden. But if it's true, this is going to be crazy. I just can't believe he would come back at 74 years old. Crazy. They said he's going to announce it on game day this Saturday. Take that for what it's worth. T and R are people that don't lie and very high-level boosters. This has all of the message board genius right here, by the way.
Just hot mess.
It has
Grammar.
every element. That's why I chose
Every element is
MBG
covered.
posted it tonight, right before the show, and I was like, "Oh, like we have to have this on." Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Also,
No.
Matthew, in the chat box. This is StreamYard is what we're using as our format. Thanks for tuning in. We're
You
every single night.
don't. You didn't cut me off. I'm just saying it had flight tracker. It had high-level boosters. It had, Gruden was involved. I mean, it was brilliant. Miss Terry's looking at land. I mean, it just checks every box.
Did you see the video circulating this week? Nick was watching the NFL game on Sunday and like sitting there in his Afghan, and Miss Terry
so
brings his cake over, and she goes, "Get up." And like he just snapped to attention, and I'm like, I absolutely love the fact that this is the true GOAT, that Miss Terry is the true GOAT. And like,
Did you see the boxes in the background? They were packing them up.
Oh,
Moved to
was that what it
Baton
was?
Rouge.
Yeah, we're gonna go back and look in the TV screen and see if we can find a reflection in the television to see if there's anything being moved. My favorite part of the video was the fact that he doesn't take his eyes off of the game. It's the Chiefs Bills game. He's locked. It doesn't when she tells him to sit up, she got the cake in front of his face. He's so intently watching the football game because Nick Saban is the ultimate football guy, right? All right. Yeah, so we had to throw one in there because it is the SEC, and we did have breaking news tonight that Virgil Osprey is now the AD at LSU. So if they keep moving as quickly as presidents and athletic directors, maybe they'll have a coach by the time we wake up tomorrow. If that's the case,
is available.
We'll be back to talk about it on SEC Sunday night. This is the Chief Sports Network. I want to say thanks to Drew, thanks to Casey, and also a big shout out to Memphis Spence for coming on straight out of that presser. He's Craig McMichael. I'm Rob Williams, and we're here every Sunday night at 8 o'clock live on the Chief Sports Network. We'll see you Sunday night.